These are the most bizarre, creepy, and interesting gaming mysteries which have been puzzling gamers for years. To anomalies like Half-Life's enigmatic G-Man, to solved mysteries like L is real, seemingly useless items, and hidden cutscenes not discovered until years later, and other secrets which still remain unsolved and mysterious like the FF06B5 rabbit hole from Cyberpunk 2077. This is the Gaming Mysteries Iceberg Explained. Bob and Face, Sonic 2. You may or may not have heard about this one. It's more of a recent mystery, in the grand scheme of things at least, even though it pertains to a game that came out in 1992, that being Sonic 2. Anyways, back in 2019, well after the release and popularity of this game, a very strange image was found of a man, known only as bobandface.png, on a developer disk of the game used for storing sprites. Naturally, this off-putting and pretty unsettling image immediately drew curiosity and intrigue. This all came from a former Sega employee known as Tom Payne, who provided the development floppy disks which contained assets from the game, including sprites and concept art, as well as this strange image. What is this? Who is this man in the green suit? Why are there extra frames that exist of him winking, indicating this was meant to be animated? Why is he holding up a peace sign? Why does he have a gunshot wound in his shoulder? And why is there a building with a disfigured face in the background? Lots of questions and not a lot of answers to this day. Most likely it was just an inside joke created for the development team, or was meant to act as a sort of placeholder or something, and not meant to appear in the actual game, as there are numerous examples of this happening in the past, such as with Yummer, that weird sprite that appeared in a SpongeBob game called SpongeBob Saves the Day. FF06B5, Cyberpunk 2077. This is a huge one, especially in recent times, rivaling the scale of GTA's greatest enigma, the Mount Chiliad mystery, which, don't worry, we'll get to that, but this here is definitely the biggest mystery CD Projekt Red has ever created, spanning not just Cyberpunk 2077, but even going beyond the game itself. FF06B5. Just 3 letters and 3 numbers found on a strange statue, now known as FF06B5 Prime, or simply D3, located in the corporate plaza in Night City. There are 5 other similar statues found throughout the game, 4 of which do not share the same inscription. F5, named after its coordinates, is the only other statue from the main base game to have the same letters and numbers. But what does it all mean? The code has many theories to explain its existence, ranging from a hexadecimal code translating to the color magenta, or more specifically, shocking pink, as hex color codes are represented by 6 characters, made up of numbers and letters, to the code being a MAC address, or some kind of musical notation related to a song played by a character on the piano during a certain quest, or some kind of undecipherable message belonging to a group that worships the statue, known to wear particular rings with a JG symbol, worn by one of the monks that meditates near the statue. Speaking of the monks, this could tie into a whole different theory on the statue, as it could be a representation of Buddha or Hindu gods, such as Ganesha, who is typically depicted with similar hand placements and gestures, including 4 arms, while others believe it could be the Hindu god of the planet Mars, Mangala. This all got even more confusing when stuff was slowly drip-fed into the game over time, adding more fuel to the fire with this mystery, obfuscating the truth behind the message even more, while at the same time getting more people invested in the code than ever. The Witcher 3 even received a next-gen update to coincide with the release of the Netflix series, and left clues of their own in regards to FF06B5. After pulling 3 levers and going into a secret portal into a dungeon, players found these symbols alongside a magenta or shocking pink triangle in the middle, alongside some lines which actually match up with the statue in Cyberpunk. Then with the release of Cyberpunk 2.0 in 2023, many more secrets were added to Night City. Way too much for me to discuss in this video. I would recommend Nat is Cool's video on the topic, Cyberpunk's Most Complex Mystery, if you want a full hour-and-a-half long deep dive into this fascinating story and history behind one of gaming's most insane mysteries, which is still ongoing to this day. Mount Chiliad Mystery, GTA 5. Like I said earlier, one of gaming's most convoluted Easter eggs and mysteries, which may or may not all be connected, colloquially known as the Mount Chiliad Mystery. Intrigue in this case has been going on since before the game even released, dating back to the first trailer for GTA 5, and is still going strong to this day, even though it is allegedly already solved. I already made a video about this mystery a few years ago, so I won't go into the entire history behind this entire conspiracy, but I will give a rundown of the story behind it. It all revolves around Mount Chiliad, the largest mountain featured in GTA 5, and more specifically a mural found at the summit, depicting what looks like some sort of eye on the peak, as well as a UFO, an egg, and a jetpack. Most players' first thought was that these were possible rewards which could be obtained after getting 100% completion, not only because of the fact that most of the other GTA titles had cool rewards for attaining such a feat, but also because if you go to the peak of the mountain, where the eye symbol would be on the mural, you will find a viewing deck, and on the side of it carved into the wood, a phrase stating to come back when your story is complete, as well as a red eye looking thing underneath the deck itself. You can also find a set of glyphs on the mountain too, which shows a set of 3 lines as well as a moon, signifying you have to come back at night, at 3 AM, as well as another depicting a rain cloud, suggesting there has to be stormy weather as well. Complete the game 100% and come back to the mountain with these requirements, and you have solved the Easter egg. Kind of, as this is how you encounter your first UFO, hovering above Mount Chiliad. While this may seem to be the solution to the mural, the mystery surrounding the UFOs and other secrets goes even further, as you will also find that after attaining 100% completion, that there are 2 additional UFO encounters, one located at a hippie camp in Sandy Shores, and another at the military base, Fort Zancudo. A lot more UFOs were eventually added into the game in updates to GTA Online, including actual missions involving you stealing UFO parts from Fort Zancudo itself. The reason some people believe this mystery to still be unsolved and ongoing is the 2 other glyphs on the mural which depict a cracked egg, possibly alien, as well as a jetpack, the long-rumored reward for completing this Easter egg, as not only is it featured in the drawing, but was also obtainable in GTA San Andreas. The jetpack was not actually obtainable in the base game, same thing with the cracked alien egg, both were only added into GTA Online. The egg being part of an obscure mission where you steal it from a UFO, and the jetpack being added in as part of the Doomsday Heist update, which many believe may have been created using material from the cancelled single-player DLC content. This all connects with the Doomsday Heist due to some paintings or murals which can be found in the facility added in the update, hidden inside of Mount Chiliad, that directly connects to another elaborate Easter egg involving you turning into Bigfoot. Yeah, it's sort of a never-ending myth, but if you want a more in-depth explanation, check out my video on GTA's deepest rabbit hole. Borealis, Half-Life 2, and Portal. Fun fact, it seems that the Half-Life games and Portal, 2 very different single-player games by Valve, share the same universe, thanks to various references to Aperture Science, which can be found in the Half-Life games and vice versa, with things like Black Mesa and HEV. But the most obvious case of this is the ship known as the Borealis, which can be found in Half-Life 2 Episode 2. The ship was an icebreaker and research vessel used by Aperture Science, the research organization responsible for the Portal devices and their tests. It seems to be abandoned with little known about what happened to those on board, or what they were doing in the Arctic. Although, it's thought that they were likely conducting some sort of top-secret experiments, possibly utilizing the Portal technology, which explains why the vessel and its occupants could vanish.
It's the Borealis!
Good God.
Incredible!
What? The Borealis? It's real?
Oh yes, quite real, despite its almost legendary stature. Our peers at Aperture Science were at work on a project of some promise, but in their rush to beat Black Mesa for funding, they must have compromised ordinary standards of risk. We heard their research vessel had simply disappeared, vanished, with all hands, and even part of the dry dock.
The Borealis' dry dock can also be found in Portal 2, in Test Shaft 09, and was also likely going to play a role in the planned and later cancelled Half-Life 2 Episode 3, which can be seen in concept art showing the wrecked Borealis, leading many to believe that it would have been central to the game's plot, or at least would have been more fleshed out, explaining why the ship and its crew vanished. Either way, without an explanation, We don't know what really happened, although it does bear many similarities to the urban legend of the Philadelphia experiment, in which the ship, the USS Eldridge, was allegedly teleported hundreds of miles away. Strange Man, Red Dead Redemption. This is another Rockstar related mystery, and one I briefly touched on in my Red Dead Redemption Myths video, but this is definitely the most enigmatic and mysterious character that can be found throughout both of the Red Dead Redemption titles. To this day, he remains shrouded in ambiguity, and is one of the most perplexing characters in all of gaming, resembling in quite a few ways the peculiar G-Man, stalking the player throughout Half-Life and Half-Life 2, with an almost overarching omnipresence, watching and observing the player's actions from a distance. He most prominently appears in Red Dead Redemption 1 through a set of stranger missions known by the ominous title, I Know You, where a man in a top hat, known only as the Strange Man, comments about how he knows John Marston and proceeds to send him on various missions testing his morality, such as him having to deal with a man who he somehow knows is going to be unfaithful with his wife, or a nun who John can either choose to rob or protect from bandits. The Strange Man seems to know all of John's deeds, commenting on his involvement in the brutal Blackwater Massacre that occurs prior to the events of Red Dead Redemption 2, referencing a specific victim of Dutch Vanderland. In the final encounter, John again pries for who the man is, and all he says is that he is an accountant of sorts, to which John tries to shoot the man, only for the 3 bullets fired to go right through him. Spoilers for Red Dead Redemption incoming, so skip to the next entry if you haven't played the game, but this exact site they are standing on in Beecher's Hope becomes the gravesite of 3 graves for the 3 bullets fired. John himself, his wife Abigail, and uncle, and you can see John's son Jack visit the graves at the end of the game. So who is this man? Some sort of supernatural figure, a guiding angel, the devil, the Grim Reaper, God? That's up to you to decide. But this isn't the end of the Strange Man's story, as he once again appears in Red Dead Redemption 2, although far less prominently. You can find his shack in the bayou. Inside you will see a series of paintings, which change depending on the player's honor, like with the animals in the ending of the game, showing a deer and an eagle for high honor, and a vulture and a wolf for low honor. Also, like Red Dead 1, there are references to player actions as well directly, with a poem carved into the table, referencing Arthur's encounter with the witness from Blackwater, Jimmy Brooks. Again, there's another Blackwater connection there, changing depending on if you spared or killed him. There are other cryptic and ominous messages on the wall, which relate to the game's story, such as another referencing Blackwater, saying the water is black with venom, and another simply reading, I know you, like the mission from Red Dead 1. A portrait of the Strange Man can also be found in Herbert Moon's shop in the town of Armadillo, a seemingly cursed place decimated by disease, which also happens to be the starting location of Red Dead Redemption 1. A guy on the outskirts of town even says during the outbreak that he saw a man in a top hat and suit looming in the distance, like some sort of vengeful god, further supporting the theory that he is some kind of divine being or supernatural entity. The final encounter can be found at the shack when the portrait in the middle becomes the man in question, and the Strange Man can be seen watching the player in the mirror, but when you turn around, he's gone. So who or what is the Strange Man? What he wants, as well as his true nature, remains unclear. Although, as stated previously, theories range from him being death itself to God or even the devil or some kind of demonic entity. Hell Valley Skytrees, Super Mario Galaxy. It doesn't get much more classic gaming mystery than the Hell Valley Skytrees, a bizarre encounter found in Super Mario Galaxy 2 in World 5's Shiverburn Galaxy. In the level, you can spot some dark figures in the distance, watching Mario from above, not moving. But what really got players curious was when they started looking into the files of the game, where they found the skybox texture for the map, which was titled as Beyond Hell Valley, which is admittedly a pretty strange and creepy name for a Mario asset. The silhouette textures themselves were known in the files as Hell Valley Skytrees. What actually are they though, as this seems to be the only appearance of these creatures in the entire franchise? Well, unless you count this other ghostly encounter, which can be seen in World 4.4 and 8.4 of Super Mario 3D Land, near this fence by this goalpost. Speculation about the true identity of the Hell Valley Skytrees ranged from aliens to demons to spirits from Japanese folklore known as Kodama, which is the main theory that most subscribe to today, as they most resemble the figures in question and are known to inhabit trees, hence the internal naming scheme of Hell Valley Skytrees. Sound test: Sonic CD. Sonic CD, released in 1993, is a classic Sonic platformer for the long-forgotten Sega CD console, and later released on Windows, GameCube, PlayStation 2, and other consoles. I've never played the game personally, but I of course know about the infamous sound test Easter egg, which absolutely horrified me as a kid, and how could it not? If you set the numbers to 46, 12, and 25, you are greeted with this very weird looking Sonic face and the creepiest music they could have possibly chosen, as well as a Japanese message which reads, "Fun is infinite, Sega Enterprises." Now, you may be wondering why. Well, it's even weirder when you realize it's only the North American release that's like this. Both the European and Japanese versions are far less scary, with a much lighter soundtrack that completely changes the feel and vibe of this screen. So I and many others are really just left wondering why they made the American version of this so much creepier compared to the original release. Pendant: Dark Souls. So this one isn't too crazy, and there are probably more well-known mysteries in the Dark Souls lore, but I'm definitely no lore hound when it comes to the Souls games, so I probably wouldn't do that justice. But I do know about one of the most enigmatic items in the whole game, which has puzzled people for years as to its purpose, and has been the subject of much speculation: the pendant. When you create your character in Dark Souls, you select a gift, starting items that can give you a temporary advantage at the start of the game, usually not affecting it very much, unless you pick up the Master Key, which actually lets you open a lot of doors early on, and is usually the go-to pick. But the other items don't do too much. Just some humanity, some mid-rings, firebombs, binoculars, or a pendant, which does nothing. The description reads, "Trinket, no effect, but fond memories comfort travelers." This actually isn't true. I mean, it is for the most part. It doesn't give you any buffs or anything like that, but it can be traded to Snuggly the Crow to receive a souvenir of Reprisal, an item used to level up the Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant. It can also be found on a corpse, as well as on the altar of the undead parish if the NPC Petrus ends up killing Rhea. However, players believed for a while, and some still do, that there is something else to this item that we still haven't figured out. Maybe it's some part of an Easter egg, or it has a secret function which just hasn't been discovered. I mean, why else would they put a useless item in the game? These rumors were even further fueled when Hidetaka Miyazaki, the game's director, stated that players should choose it or nothing as their starting gift. Why suggest an item of no relevance to the game? Well, the answer is likely just the developers trolling us. As Miyazaki later said, it was just a prank.
I'm joking! Stop! 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 Stop the prank! Stop! Stop! Stop!
Extended ending and secret character: Modern Warfare 3. The original Modern Warfare trilogy, not whatever these games are, have a pretty cut and dry story. Everything for the most part, including all the villains and characters, are wrapped up nicely at the end of MW3. Makarov is dead, Captain Price is the last one left, and the world is saved. The 4 horsemen introduced in COD 4 are finally all dead. The mission is finally complete, or so we thought for many years, until just about a year ago. A deleted final scene was found from the MW3 2011 ending that changes everything. A man steps into the scene as Makarov hangs from the ceiling, watching and eventually walking away as Price actually bleeds out and dies, dropping his cigar as his vision fades to black. Not only is this a much darker ending, as none of the main characters survive now, but there is also this stranger who appears in this scene as some sort of potential sequel bait or foreshadowing for future titles. But of course, this never was actually used in the final game, and to this day, we still don't know who this man was, or why he was planned to be included in the ending. Likely they didn't know either, and the model was just a placeholder for someone they could insert later on for a planned sequel which never happened. This is further supported by the fact that someone actually no-clipped in the cutscene and went over to this guy, only for it to just be a generic dude. Well, more specifically, he's using the model of one of the Russian Secret Service agents from the campaign. Obviously, it's not that guy because all of these guys die in that mission. Some thought it was meant to be Rourke, the villain of Call of Duty Ghosts, which would be Infinity Ward's next game in the franchise, and was maybe at some point going to be used to connect the two series, but yeah, like I said, I don't even think Infinity Ward knew at the time who this was meant to be, and was just going to be there as a cliffhanger ending for if they wanted to continue the Modern Warfare series or not, before they decided that it should end with the third installment, until of course the Modern Warfare reboot in 2019. Bug Jars, Skyrim. Skyrim and other Bethesda games in general have no shortage of secret locations, hidden quests, and cryptic lore, and seemingly lost and cut content hidden in the files, but one of the most fascinating mysteries to come out of the Elder Scrolls V are the bugs in jars, 5 of them in fact, which have seemingly no known purpose. You can find a bee in Golden Glow Estate, a butterfly in the Alchemist Shack, a dragonfly in Dushnik Yal Cellar, a moth in Duskglow Crevice, and finally a torch bug in Frostflow Lighthouse, the only fictional insect in this list, unique to Skyrim. They are all miscellaneous items, and have a weight of 1 and a value of 1, and no other known uses. So why are they in the game, and so highly detailed? Were they a part of a piece of cut content, or are they simply just decorations for player homes? Well, keen-eyed players noticed that there are actually some symbols on the bottom of the jars, which some interpreted as old runic symbols, or even just sloppy English writing, but none of these seem to really fit. Some even translated the letters from English to numbers, giving codes or possibly dates, or even a math equation to get a different set of numbers for each jar, but it seems these are all just grasping at straws. Unfortunately, it seems there isn't really much else to this mystery, as a YouTuber named Camelworks managed to get in touch with one of Skyrim's level designers, who stated the jar symbols had no meaning behind them, although they did at one point have some huge half-baked idea that was never fully fulfilled involving said jars, leaving them as just a remnant from some sort of cut concept from the game. What was this huge idea though? We may never know. Creepy Castle Pillar, Donkey Kong 64. Developed by Rare for the N64 back in 1999, we have Donkey Kong 64, and one of the most well-known and discussed mysteries among their titles, the pillar found in Creepy Castle. By using the teleporter in the ballroom of the castle as tiny, and then using another one hidden behind a stone building, you will then be taken to this room with the mysterious pillar that has no known meaning, and has been puzzling gamers and been the genesis of playground rumors and myths in many people's childhoods. You might be thinking, well, what's so special about some random pillar in a castle? Well, I think it's mostly the fact that it's just tucked away in the map, and as far as we know, is the only one of its kind in the game. Couple that with the hole in the ceiling with light flooding in straight above it, as well as the strange swinging lamp, and yeah, it looks like this pillar is of some kind of importance, but it does nothing. Some believed that it held the secret location of the scroll of gameplay, and could only be unlocked through some sort of hidden ritual, while others thought it was probably a part of some cut content, possibly related to the Banjo-Kazooie stop and swap feature. A developer did actually clarify a bit about the pillar when asked about it during a Q&A on the Rare website. They responded saying, quote, "There was originally a very good reason for it to be there, but now there's not. Just like the tree stump in Fungi Forest was originally riddled with termites, but now it's not. One of those things, developmental fluctuations, stuff like that. Still, feel free to give us a laugh by sending in details of the most ridiculous, pointless, anal theories you've had about how this pillar is used to reach the DK64 Lost World. Best one wins a packet of Chewits. What exactly was this quote-unquote good reason for the pillar being here? We still do not know, and it's up to your speculation, as with all great mysteries still unsolved. Mysterious Book, Super Mario Sunshine. No doubt the greatest mystery found in Super Mario Sunshine, released on the GameCube in 2002, is the book hidden in Noki Bay. In the third episode, Red Coins in a Bottle, located in the ruins at the bottom of the bottle, is a locked door which the player cannot access. However, through the use of rotating the camera, players can peer behind the door to find an unknown book hidden away from sight. Players initially thought this was an Easter egg and a well-kept secret. Players would either have to find a key to the door to get the book, or somehow warp into the room and exit using the door, as some in the game only open from one side. Or some even thought that there was a secret way to drain the water from the bottle, like how you access the castle basement in Mario 64. But no such solutions could be found, and the book remained locked behind the door. Once players were able to actually data mine the game, they learned why. The book and the door were not interactable, and were in fact a part of the geometry of the ruins themselves, but that still leaves the question of why the book was included in the first place, if there was an immovable door blocking access to it. Was it to spark the curiosity of exploratory gamers, peeking into every nook and cranny of the game, or was it once, at some point, part of a larger Easter egg, or another piece of content for the game that ended up being cut? We may never know. Desert Rings, Shadow of the Colossus. In Shadow of the Colossus, the critically acclaimed PS2 title from 2005, the arena of the 13th Colossus, known as the Desert, is the home of one of gaming's great mysteries. The stone rings, which appear to have no significance, but appear both intact and in ruins throughout the level. There are also various other mysterious ruined structures in the area, such as this stone slab. Players also notice that the 13th Colossus, Phalanx, has a flight path that lines up seemingly with the placement of the rings, although for whatever reason, it never goes anywhere near the ring in the northernmost part of the map. This mystery has been covered in a much deeper dive by a YouTuber named Nomad Colossus, who also proposes that the rings were once used as a sort of barrier to keep Phalanx from flying away, which would explain why it avoids them and has to stay within their boundaries, even the ones that are broken. This would all tie in with the general theme of the Colossi in the game being bound to their arenas in some way, unable to escape. Who lost to Glass Joe? Punch-Out. Maybe this is a question you never thought to ask, and I guess I didn't either until Wang made his video on the topic, but now that I think about it, yeah, really, who lost to Glass Joe? If you don't know, Glass Joe is the easiest opponent in Punch-Out, maybe aside from Von Kaiser, and is the first person you fight in the game, almost impossible to lose to, even in your first time playing the game, unless you're Mike Tyson, I guess.
I couldn't even beat Glass Joe, you know what I mean? I couldn't even play the game.
So how then is his record 99 losses and 1 win by knockout? Who possibly could have Glass Joe knocked out, and why does he even keep boxing? The first theory proposed by Wang in his video is that it might have been Gabby J, the Glass Joe equivalent in the SNES game Super Punch-Out from 1994, who also shares the record of 99 losses and 1 win. Maybe these two both beat each other, as Gabby J's bio states that he was born in Paris and studied at the Glass Joe boxing school and knocked him out for his one and only win before he entered the professional circuit. Another theory states that Glass Joe's one and only victory came at the hands of Little Mac, the protagonist of Punch-Out. That's right, Little Mac, who becomes the world champion and beats Mike Tyson in his prime, gets knocked out by Glass Joe. How, you might ask? Well, there is a relatively obscure Punch-Out comic called The First Fight, in which you can clearly see Little Mac getting knocked out by a blonde boxer, who may or may not be Glass Joe. If it is, this is truly an embarrassing L for Mac that he will never live down. Plus, this probably isn't actually canon, as Little Mac's record in Punch-Out is 0-0, meaning he hasn't boxed professionally yet. Funnily enough, an issue of Nintendo Power magazine stated that Glass Joe somehow, through sheer luck, beat the champion and final boss of Super Punch-Out, Nick Bruiser. However, this also doesn't really line up with the records, as Nick Bruiser has a perfect record of 42 wins and 0 losses in Super Punch-Out. Some have explained this away by claiming Super Punch-Out could actually be a prequel to Punch-Out, with Glass Joe getting his one win after the protagonist of Super Punch-Out, who I guess is not actually Little Mac, defeats the undefeated Nick Bruiser. Although this is also contradicted by the other returning boxers like Mr. Sandman, Super Macho Man, and Bald Bull, who all have additional losses thanks to their fights with Little Mac. So this one is really still up in the air, or just a case of messy canon. The Bite of 87, Five Nights at Freddy's.
Was that the bite of?
But actually though, despite the insane amount of lore, contradicting, retconned, and otherwise, there still is no explanation behind the Bite of 87, aside from the one brief mention in the Night 1 phone call in the original FNAF.
So just be aware, the characters do tend to wander a bit. They're left in some kind of free roaming mode at night. Something about their servos locking up if they get turned off for too long. They used to be allowed to walk around during the day too, but then there was the Bite of 87. Yeah. It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
All we gather from this is at one of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria locations in the year 1987, someone had their frontal lobe bitten out, likely by an animatronic of course. But where did this occur? Who was the victim, and which animatronic was responsible? Once Five Nights at Freddy's 2 released, a game which is revealed to take place in 1987, it seemed more cut and dry that this location was where the bite took place, and perhaps Jeremy Fitzgerald, the night security guard we play as in the game, is the victim, and who better a culprit than the animatronic known as Mangle, whose jumpscare animation consists of them coming down from the ceiling to bite down onto your brain. However, this all became even more confusing and uncertain when a very different bite incident was introduced in FNAF 4 with the Bite of 83, which is a completely separate event in which the crying child is shoved into the jaws of a spring-lock animatronic which bites down onto his head at a Fredbear's Family Diner location. This is a completely unrelated incident as far as we know, which makes this all the more confusing. Some have theorized that Foxy may have been the one to cause the bite, thanks to Pirate's Cove being out of order at the start of FNAF 1, possibly because of the accident, although this wouldn't make much sense as the game takes place years later, in or around 1993. For now, it is up to fan speculation and theories as to who caused it and who was the true victim. Mysterious Stranger, Fallout. Who exactly is the mysterious stranger in the Fallout universe? Making an appearance in almost all of the mainline games, this is one of the most enigmatic and interesting characters to be found throughout the entire wasteland, typically only appearing due to a VATS perk, also called the Mysterious Stranger, in which he will randomly show up and help in encounters when using VATS. Other than the fact that it simply serves a gameplay purpose, who exactly is he? Some kind of supernatural entity? A figment of the user's imagination? A part of the Pip-Boy? He's often depicted wearing a trench coat and a fedora, wielding a .44 Magnum revolver, and in both Fallout 3 and New Vegas, a guitar riff is played when he holsters or unholsters his weapon. This is important in New Vegas because you can encounter an NPC known as the Lonesome Drifter, who has a weapon on him, a .44 Magnum called the Mysterious Magnum. If you manage to obtain the weapon yourself and pull it out, it plays the same tune. The Drifter also talks about his estranged father, who could possibly be the man's dad, hence why he has his gun. Although many believe that the Mysterious Stranger is more than just a mere mortal man, given he has appeared in multiple games spanning chronologically hundreds of years and throughout multiple parts of the wasteland. The name could be a not-so-subtle hint to Mark Twain's novella titled Number 44, The Mysterious Stranger, in which it depicts a well-dressed stranger thought to represent the devil. Could the Mysterious Stranger just be a simple reference to this character and novel, especially given his signature .44 Magnum revolver, or is there something more to this story? That's up to you to decide. The Freezer, Saints Row 2. Truth be told, I'm more of a GTA guy. Didn't really play much of the Saints Row games outside of a little bit with the third one. However, this particular mythological entity and mystery is one of the most fascinating in this entire list. A character that can randomly spawn into Saints Row 2 and cause it to crash, and sometimes even corrupt the data, known aptly as the Freezer. It sounds like a creepypasta, I know. He appears as a simple gray silhouette on the wall, before your game completely destroys itself for seemingly no reason. But the glitch can actually be triggered manually using an exploit inside of the Zombie Uprising minigame, which eventually, after walking around in the open world for long enough, will cause the shadowy figure to appear and not only crash your game, but completely brick your copy of Saints Row 2, as documented by YouTuber Mr. Saints Godzilla 21, who did an investigation into this long-storied mystery. But what is causing this? How is it destroying the game itself? Is it just a glitch or something more? Some believe that the Freezer was simply just a glitched model of a zombie, although it doesn't really resemble any of the known zombie models, even as just a shadow. Eventually though, it was discovered that the Freezer only existed in the Xbox 360 disc version of the game and wasn't accessible in the PS3, PC, or even the downloadable Xbox 360 versions. Additionally, a few encounters with the Freezer were found for only a few frames, in which it doesn't actually cause the game to violently crash. Mr. Saints Godzilla 21 was eventually able to get in contact with a Volition developer, who explained that the glitch was likely caused by breaking out of the Zombie Uprising activity, which loads different conflicting versions of the map, especially basement worlds and level interiors, causing the crashes. Though I'm still not sure why it can brick whole copies and even entire Xboxes. I've never really heard of any other video game glitch doing that on its own, especially one so seemingly benign as this one. Bruise, Middle-earth Shadow of War. As outlined in an IGN article back in 2019, titled, "Shadow of War's Nemesis system took things way too far," we have one of the most interesting glitches or encounters I have ever heard of in these Middle-earth games. First though, let me give a little background on the Nemesis system that Warner Bros. Was so proud of that they patented it, so no one else could replicate or use it. To be fair though, it is a really cool system. It creates a bunch of unique Uruks, orcs that populate Middle-earth, and have their own personalities, names, characteristics, traits, and can even rise up the ranks organically, and can create emergent gameplay experiences. And in Shadow of War, the sequel of Shadow of Mordor, it was even further expanded. If you shame these Uruks, or they live through their encounters, they will remember these moments, even maybe have scars to prove it. If they kill you, they will level up, gain notoriety among the other orcs. It's a really cool and unique and unpredictable storytelling system done through gameplay. Anyway, there are a ton of things that can happen with these enemies, but something very strange and nearly unexplainable happened to writer Brendan Graeber, who claimed that during his playthrough of the game, he recruited the orc, Bruise the Chopper, who ends up betraying you later on in the story. He then went on to shame him multiple times throughout his playthrough, leaving him alive but humiliating him enough times that he went completely insane. He then killed the orc, but he managed to cheat death, coming back with some fresh scars. However, after beating the game back when it released in 2017, he then left that save file for years, only to return to the game and delete this previous save file and start a new one. However, in a sort of been-drowned fashion, Bruise somehow returned, still remembering their previous encounters. This didn't make much sense considering the player was level 2 and Bruise was level 40, and also was one of the few story-related orcs that only appears later on in the story when they can be dominated, meaning he shouldn't be showing up this early, especially not at that level. It's unclear how the system managed to override his save file and transcend into an entirely different game. It appears to just be some sort of creepy glitch, as every time he appeared he would simply grunt at the player instead of delivering his usual voice lines. It seems as though Bruise was so humiliated by his encounter in the previous save, he came back for revenge on a completely different file. A lot of how the Nemesis system truly works remains hidden thanks to the trademarks placed on it by Warner Bros. And with Monolith Productions being shut down, rest in peace, it looks like we may never again, at least not for a very long time, get an answer to this, and even worse, may not see another implementation of the Nemesis system again. Letting Go, Destiny. Before the release of Destiny 1, back in July 2011, a mysterious video was posted to YouTube by a user called JoyUse7, containing quite a few symbols and imagery that would later be used in Bungie's shooter title Destiny, released on September 9th, 2014. Now I know what you're thinking. My first thought too was, well, Bungie's known for doing ARGs for their games to build up hype and intrigue. They did so with Halo 2 quite famously, so this must just be another example of that. I mean, how else would this person have the Destiny logo 3 years before the game would come out? There is even a sort of poem in the video which has this symbol of a man chained that even resembles the logo itself, with the poem possibly being connected to the AI character Rasputin, or even possibly the Traveler. The channel name might also be a hint to the story, JoyUse, being a legendary sword associated with the first Roman Emperor Charlemagne, and also the name of a Destiny AI. How could this person know so much about Destiny's lore well before the game released, unless they had inside knowledge? Was this a planned ARG, or was this made by someone working closely with the studio? Well, Bungie denies any ties to this video, and says they had nothing to do with it, which seems odd, given the amount of coincidental details that were correct. 2113, Trials Evolution. One of the strangest unsolved mysteries in gaming comes from an unlikely source, an unassuming Xbox Live Arcade title later ported to PC called Trials Evolution, a sequel to Trials HD, and one of many 2.5D racing/puzzle bike games developed by Red Lynx. These games are awesome, by the way, especially Evolution. This game is my childhood. The games are also known for their secrets, however, hidden squirrels around the map, secret shortcuts, hidden routes, etc. But over time, players found something a lot more cryptic than usual, a series of planks of wood with seemingly indecipherable codes written on them, hidden throughout the levels, until someone was actually able to gather all of them together and decipher the entire coded message, which read, "In-game music to 0 from the game options, nature calls with Scorpion, start and pass the first checkpoint, leap from the rock and stop on the next rock, push the right stick up, down, left, right." This was a very specific set of instructions, using the Scorpion bike on the Nature Calls stage, and performing the actions from a certain rock while the music was at 0, which is a sin in this game by the way, it has great music, causes the camera to detach from the player, and a song starts playing. Further analysis of the song prompted a spectral analysis, which revealed Morse code that translated to check song spectra in each song, which caused players to do the same with the other songs from the soundtrack, leading to the discovery of a website called fixedpatterncodes.com. It didn't look like much to the naked eye, but once again, using an exclusion filter, they were able to discover a new code. Well, more so a Latin passage taken from philosopher Lucretius's work De Rerum Natura, translated to, quote, "Finally, the rains cease, where the Father of the sky, Ether, has poured them into the lap of Mother Earth, but bright crops grow, and the branches turn green on the trees, and they themselves grow and become heavy with fruit." A series of images were then later found on the website, 26 in fact, which were all related with a person of science, such as Isaac Newton and Einstein. These images were then translated using the name of the person associated with them to find the letters that spelled out "Big Freeze with no complete end." Once this correct phrase was then inputted into the website, this final page was displayed, which showed 4 locations around the world, as well as specific GPS coordinates and a hint to go along with each one. Eventually, the community was able to track down these locations and uncover these 4 small treasure chests, along with their keys and a metal plaque, which is where this ARG gets really crazy, because it reads that one of the 5 keys will open the box underneath the Eiffel Tower in the year 2113. And that wasn't a mistake. Red Lynx has confirmed that there are arrangements so that something will be able to be opened with the keys in the year 2113. Likely anyone watching this video or solving this mystery for that matter, will not be alive to see this through, meaning this mystery will remain unsolved for almost 100 more years. There's also the issue of the 5th key referenced in the metal plate, because there are only 4 keys as far as we know, unless we count the digital one hidden in Trials Fusion, the sequel to Trials Evolution. Camdrome. Camdrome is a title you might not have heard of, or at least not in a good while, as this was a more popular mystery about a decade ago, after its strange appearance at PAX Prime 2013. This was what was available at the booth in the indie section, with no attendant to answer any questions, just a PC and monitor sitting on top of plastic bags covered in blood, alongside a webcam on top, similar to the one featured on the logo, which was present on the screen. There was no gameplay or anything else of note, other than brief clips which would play on the screen, showing a person in a mask alongside their various victims. The footage shown was reminiscent of FMV horror games, such as Phantasmagoria, and similar to films like David Cronenberg's Videodrome. At the same time, a Twitter account for the game, or whatever this was, appeared posting various cryptic coded messages. Gaming journalists also received some weird messages from the Twitter account and through email, including videos of people being murdered by this masked person, as well as other encrypted messages. This was all very weird. No one knew what this game was or who was behind it. Even the other developers at PAX were initially confused who was running the booth, as when they showed up, the display was already there. Eventually though, it was found out that Team Meat, creators of Super Meat Boy and The Binding of Isaac, were behind the project. At least they thought so. When asked about it, they claimed they knew the devs and helped set up the booth at PAX, but weren't actually the ones who made it. This would seem to be confirmed by the fact that they would reveal Super Meat Boy Forever not long after, and Camdrome would go silent. No future appearances at PAX, nothing. Radio silence. Just as quick and out of nowhere as it showed up, it vanished. Everyone was left in the dark as to what this game even was, who made it, and if it was ever going to materialize. It wasn't until 2020 that Edmund McMillan of Team Meat finally admitted that he worked on the game, and that it was an FMV horror title as many had predicted, and never actually materialized, unfortunately, due to one of the people involved getting cold feet about the project. This leaves us today wondering if this will ever actually return, what all was made for the game, and what it would have been like, as it mostly remains unexplained, cementing its legacy as one of the more strange and mysterious cancelled games to ever grab public interest. Treasure Chest, Banjo-Kazooie. The locked chest in Banjo-Kazooie is an artifact of its time that has puzzled and frustrated gamers throughout their childhoods. A strange room can be found at the top of Mad Monster Mansion, which can only be entered through a window. The room strangely has no doors, and the only thing of note, besides a bed, is a chest, which can't actually be opened through any known means, so why is it even here? There is a similar giant chest that is accessible as an entry point to Treasure Trove Cove, so why doesn't this one do anything? Was it meant to be a secret entrance to another level, or have some sort of collectible before it was cut from the game? Well, there's no real way of knowing, as the chest is just a part of the room's geometry, and probably nothing more than a decoration. But that makes you wonder why this room was even accessible then in the first place. Ghosts of Lockout, Halo 2. I'm not talking about the Covenant vehicles. This was actually a very popular myth in the Halo community, and likely a bizarre glitch that players would sometimes encounter on multiplayer maps, more specifically, usually on Lockout, but could still definitely be a pretty creepy encounter if you were just roaming the map alone, only to find another player. The first known documented instance of one of the Halo 2 ghosts was posted to YouTube by the user AfroSauce of an Xbox Live arcade match on the map Lockout between only 2 players, which also actually happened to have a third player that was not visible on the scoreboard, a white Spartan who walked around the map and behaved erratically, following and killing the player while gliding around the map. The kills were attributed in the kill feed to the Guardians, which is what is displayed in the game when a player is usually killed by the environment, rather than by actual players. This video sparked the whole Ghosts of Lockout phenomenon, where other people discussed their own experiences, and even shared other videos of this happening to them, not just on Lockout either, but on other maps as well. This wasn't even just exclusive to Halo 2 either. There were a couple of instances of these ghost players appearing in Halo 3 on the remake of Lockout, in that game known as Blackout. What was causing this? Were these maps haunted? Was a rogue AI jumping into the game to kill players for some reason? Or is this just a weird glitch? Theories range from it being a malicious player modding their way into people's games to frighten them, while others suggest it's just another enemy AI that takes the form of a player Spartan. This would at least make some sense given how deadly accurate its grenade throws and shots are, or this could even be the leftover remnants of a possible cut bot feature, one that would have allowed players to fight not just their friends and randoms online on Xbox Live, but also AI Spartans as well, but was removed obviously before it was finished. And somehow there's a way to glitch it into existence, and for some reason it really likes the map Lockout for whatever reason. Either way, this is a great urban legend. But there really is no explanation for this one as far as I could see. So watch yourself next time you and your friend are doing a private match on Lockout, and see if you can find another player you never invited. Ironclad, Call of Duty 3. Call of Duty is known to have quite a few strange and bizarre Easter eggs hidden throughout their games, whether it be the creepy room in COD 1 or the dead cows found in almost every mainline title. One of the lesser known and discussed ones can be found in one of the least talked about COD games ever, Call of Duty 3. This whole thing started when a developer who worked on COD 3 responded to an Easter egg found in Spider-Man of a wedding proposal that ended with the couple eventually breaking up, to which he said that this has happened before and is definitely a cursed Easter egg. Eventually it was found that he was likely talking about a really obscure COD 3 DLC map only available on the Xbox 360 called Ironclad, which had a scripted message Easter egg for one of the developer's girlfriends which was never discovered, or possibly never even implemented, as the guy who was trying to hide the message, Jason McCord, told another developer, Mike Denny, to put it into the game, so either he forgot, or it's just so well hidden that nobody has found it to this day. Rocket Sloth did an hour-long video deep diving into this, searching everywhere you could possibly look for any signs of this Easter egg to no avail, leaving us wondering if it's even in the game at all. Invisible Staircase, Castlevania 2. This one isn't too crazy and likely is just a part of an unfinished section of the game, but has nevertheless left people puzzled over the years. Towards the end of Castlevania 2, before you enter Dracula's castle, you can continue past a staircase which eventually takes you where you need to go in order to continue the main game. Following this, you will find a strange secret area, a swamp that looks very out of place, with nothing else like it in the game. There is nothing of note in this area, no items or anything, except for a random invisible staircase that leads to nothing, except some random platforms. Was this all part of a secret cut area? Is there still an unsolved hidden Easter egg in this location? Likely not, but still, why is this even in the game when there are no items to be found or even any NPCs to be talked to? Makes you wonder at least what this was planned for originally, especially when you know how many cryptic secrets there are in this game, some of which are even required just to beat it. Bar, Breath of Fire. Developed by Capcom in the early 90s for the SNES, Breath of Fire would go on to become a series of adventure role-playing games, and one of the unique buildings that has been the subject of speculation in the game is the bar, which cannot be entered during normal gameplay, as soldiers stop you from entering the town during the day, and also, even at nighttime, a soldier will be blocking the entrance to the bar. However, if you manage to glitch or mod yourself into the town during the day, you can actually enter the bar, only to find it unfinished, even though there are NPCs in the building which can be interacted with and talked to, which seems to confirm that at one point, this was planned to be a place you could actually go into. We don't know why it was cut or what exactly you could do here, but it's possible that it was cut because of censorship reasons. Ben and Ed. Released by the developer Sluggerfly in December of 2015, Ben and Ed on the surface might just look like a run-of-the-mill platformer game, when in reality it's anything but. It's a 3D platformer in which you control the character of Ed the Zombie, who is forced into an obstacle course game show called Run Dead, ran by Hans Showmaster, which Ed will have to complete in order to save his friend Ben, but that's just the surface level of the game. Once players began looking around more closely, they found a few secret areas, one of which was a pretty creepy Easter egg to the creepypasta Ben Drowned, while another starts the infamous scavenger hunt this game is now known for, as a sign could be found reading, "Go to Ben Ed." A Facebook group was eventually found with this exact name. It contained quite a lot of disturbing and strange photos, which were hard to decipher and even understand given just the context of the game. But that isn't where the story ends. If you complete the game as Ben, in the mode called Bencalypse, you're greeted with this screen. Before completely closing the application, but at the bottom of the screen there are a set of coordinates, which leads to an isolated location in Germany that houses a very bizarre package, as you can see, containing weird photos and drawings, a bone, as well as an old iPod that apparently belonged to one of the developers. This is obviously very bizarre, but like with the Trials Evolution ARG, seems like something the developers would do for a fun, if a bit creepy alternate reality game, except the devs claim that they had nothing to do with this. This isn't the first time we've seen this though either, feigning ignorance to drum up more notoriety. Just look at Camdrome for example. From here, a YouTuber who became interested in the mystery named Burrs Gamer flew out to meet the devs in Germany to try and get to the bottom of whatever this was. They explained that they knew nothing about it, but that they had outsourced some of the game's development to an individual known only as Benedict. They also found another package with banknotes and torn up photographs, as well as a few bones nearby, and ended up being spooked when they thought they were being followed. Another set of coordinates were found in photos on the Facebook page, and were tracked down in France, where another package with torn photos and notes were also discovered. Around this time, another very disturbing video was shared on the Facebook page, which showed an actual severed foot on camera in a YouTube video, which would later be taken down for obviously violating their terms of service on graphic content. This was all going a little too far for just an ARG in a random platforming game. One of the developers, Dominic Plasman, actually got the Facebook page taken down because he didn't want anything on there to be associated with their game, or so he claims. Although the page did eventually come back with even more images revealing more coordinates and clues, including more images of Ben. However, we still haven't been able to understand what the point of this giant scavenger hunt is. Who is really behind it? Is this Benedict character a real person, or are the devs really the ones behind this elaborate ARG? And where is the conclusion? Unused Doors, Shadowgate. Shadowgate is a 1987 point-and-click adventure game released first for the Mac and later to MS-DOS and eventually the NES. The game takes place in a castle known as Castle Shadowgate, with the player having to navigate it and solve puzzles while maintaining constant torchlight. Otherwise, the player character will not be able to see and will fall and break their neck, ending the run. And with there being a limited number of torches in the game, it effectively gives you a time limit to actually beat it. With that being the case, not everyone might have completely explored the castle, but some definitely did, only to find some strange, unused doors. For unknown reasons, there's a door just out of reach that you can't access. Even clicking on it gives a prompt saying it's too high to reach, but then why even put it in the game? Especially because you can't even see it from where you're standing, so it's really weird. There are also other doors which just don't open, which I guess is common enough in games like these, but why have one that you can't even see? Like there's just no point for this to exist, unless it was part of some secret or piece of cut content. Ghosts of Misery Mire, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Misery Mire is one of 7 dungeons accessed in the dark world of Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and is also the birthplace of an interesting mystery, a ghost which can be found in the swamplands when using a medallion, which will kill an invisible enemy dropping a stack of bombs. The enemy, or whatever is here, never sits in the same place, and will burst into flames in a random spot around this area, suggesting it's moving around, despite it never attacking Link and passing right through him. But what is it? That's what many people sought to find out, including the user named Thule, who was instrumental in this investigation. Through the findings of them and many others, even more ghosts were discovered in the same area, with the same characteristics. Not being able to be damaged with normal weapons, such as a sword, but were able to be killed with arrows, bombs, and the medallion. Players believed it might have been some kind of unused enemy whose code remained in the game, or possibly an enemy from the light world, somehow glitching into the dark world level, Or it could possibly even be the Dark World version of the Geldman, which never actually appear in the game, despite many of the Light World enemies having slightly different counterparts in the Dark World, and maybe these Geldman enemies were unfinished and accidentally left only in this area. Eventually though, people were able to actually use a level editor called Hyrule Magic to determine that the enemy was actually a Dark World variant of a Fireball Zora, known as a Ku. But it's still unclear why it was placed here, and why it's immune to certain attacks and behaves erratically the way it does. The Refrigerator, Kingsley's Adventure. Released for the original PlayStation back in 1999, this is a single-player action-adventure title where you play as a fox named Kingsley, who wants to become a true knight, and to defeat the villain known as Bad Custard. The mystery comes in when you get to Reggie's Castle Ruins, where there can be found a strange piece of cut content, or just a weird Easter egg, a fridge that is locked with no way to open it. The developers have stated that there is a fridge with a talking piece of celery and carrot inside of it, trapped, but it doesn't seem like there's any way to open this, and like the locked treasure in Banjo-Kazooie, has just sort of confused people as to the reason for its existence, and has even made people question if there was some sort of secret way of opening it. Corpse, Ikari Warriors. Ikari Warriors, also known as just Ikari or Fury in Japan, this is a run-and-gun stick shooter released on arcades back in 1986, and later ported to NES later that year, and the next year in America. One of the strangest bosses that can be encountered in the game, and has left people creeped out and puzzled, is the corpse of level 3, specifically in the NES version, as the boss is just a dead body, sitting behind a desk, which is destroyed simply by using grenades. Some people think this quote-unquote boss was just supposed to be a bait and switch before leading the player to the real final boss, but there really is no explanation behind this, especially when you consider that in the original arcade version, there is no secret 4th level and boss. The game just sort of ends here anticlimactically. Who even is this guy anyway? Still one of gaming's great mysteries to this day. Demon Juice, Modern Warfare 3 2023. And finally, for our last entry, we have one of the most interesting and bizarre Call of Duty conspiracy theories I have ever seen, and one that didn't get that much attention outside of the initial release of Modern Warfare 3 2023. In the modern Call of Duty games, there have been a number of theories regarding the SBMM, or skill-based matchmaking, and how it works in these games. If you haven't heard of this, it's basically determining your approximate skill level to match you up with players of similar skill to make the game more fair and increase engagement, or so they claim, also known as EOMM, or Engagement Optimized Matchmaking. Anyways, people think it's gone far beyond just this though, with conspiracy theories ranging from skill-based connection, damage, and even fake AI players, bots used to make worse players seem better, and to even out the score so one team doesn't get completely decimated. But by far, the wildest claim is that of an AI player, only summoned to kill highly skilled players. It's one thing for the people that are bad to be able to fight bots that just walk around aimlessly, barely fighting back like they do in Fortnite, but having a highly skilled bot that can outplay and out-aim some of the sweatiest COD players is something else entirely, especially when it's one specific player that has appeared in multiple people's lobbies, killing everyone, only to leave without a trace. No Activision account, no player ID, only the name of Demon Juice. I love this because it's basically a modern gaming urban legend, a creepypasta in 2023, but it seems this player is real. Whether or not he is a bot, or just a really skilled random player, remains to be seen. However, with the sheer amount of reported encounters and fishy clips of this player circulating, it's hard not to see what they're talking about here. There were even entire articles written about this one mysterious player, who seems to show up and destroy any lobby they go into. But it's not just their skill and omnipresence that makes them seem like an AI, but also their strange unorthodox movement that doesn't seem human, coupled with its insane accuracy and apparent ability to see and shoot through walls. There hasn't been much coverage of Demon Juice recently, and not many sightings after the initial launch of Modern Warfare 3 back in November of 2023. Maybe Activision was testing some sort of new AI engagement-based matchmaking technology, or was this all just an insane tinfoil hat conspiracy theory? We may never know unless Demon Juice or similar players return in later games.